Hello fellow travelers, my name's SG and welcome to the channel. Today, instead of our usual review, I thought it'd be interesting if we did something a little different. I've always wanted to do a quick theory like you'd see in game theory, film theory, the theorizer, or night mind, and I always wanted to try one. So I thought a simple one to start with, or at least enough for me to test run, would be the donkey theory. Well, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? As far as I know, a lot of us must have heard or at least seen one of the Shrek movies. If not, then the synopsis is quick. Shrek is about an ogre that wants to live in solitude but ends up meeting Donkey, and his home or his swamp ends up getting invaded by fairy tale creatures. He goes to Duloc where he meets Lord Farquaad so that he can take the fairy tale creatures out and put them either back where they belong or even just somewhere else far away from him. Now, through this process he meets Princess Fiona, he meets several other fairy tale creatures that are recurring characters in the movie series, but the one that we're going to talk about for right now is Donkey. Donkey is the first character that is introduced after Shrek. He is said to be on the run from Farquaad's knights, and is basically the sidekick character to Shrek. Donkey is of course played by Eddie Murphy, which gives the character a bit of life. It gives him some flavor, it gives him some personality, I guess you could say. And it really shows. This allows Donkey to be annoying, it allows him to be fun, but allows him to be endearing at the same time. We don't spend a lot of time with him. Well, we do spend like a good 80% of the movies with him, but he's not our main focus. That would be Shrek, who plays more of a straight man to him. He was also played by Mike Myers. I want to dedicate this theory to Donkey because I do think that many people have mentioned it before, such as film theory or the theorizer and so on and so forth, but I want to add my 2 cents into it, and that theory is about to be said right now. The theory we're going for right now is that Donkey is from a fairy tale himself, and that we can actually talk about his origin story as the evidence suggested in the movies. In the movies, we don't actually get a background for Donkey. We get hints and little nods here and there, even in the specials and director's commentary, but never anything explicitly said, which has led to a lot of debate and a lot of controversies, at least in the fandom. And the most I've seen accepted is the Paradise Island from the Pinocchio movie being probably the most accepted theory. And that's actually what I'm working off of in this one, except I'm going to add it a bit more. Because there is another fairy tale that does involve a donkey, or at least donkey's skin. And I think that's what they call that fairy tale, the Askins story. In this story, it's an odder French fairy tale where a princess is come across the plans by her father that she is to marry him because that is the wish of her late mother, who said to the king that she cannot marry anybody besides someone as beautiful as her. She then goes to a fairy godmother who gives her the skin of a donkey and says, if you wear this, you will basically be and act like a donkey. It's an odd fairy tale and very weird reference to make, but I definitely see this. And if you've seen or played the game The Wolf Among Us, you definitely see where I'm coming from with this. It's an odd take and a different way to look at it. Another fairy tale that we can actually look into was brought up by film theory as being the donkey, where a king and a queen gave birth to a donkey and treat it like it was their son, who then goes off on an adventure with one companion. An odd choice, but it's a weird mix of the two, I like to think, because what I'm going to suggest is a bit different, a bit odd, and it kind of takes from 3 different sources. That being the Pinocchio route, the donkey skin route, and of course the donkey itself. The theory I'm going to suggest is that it is not one of these 3 fairy tales, it is exactly all of the fairy tales combined. It is a weird mix, an amalgamation of these 3. Because we do see evidence throughout the movies that Donkey was human once. I know a lot of people don't like to admit it, but it does seem like that's the case. He talks about having toes, he talks about going to school, he talks about this and that, which is odd, because if he was always a donkey, he would have no frame of reference for having these experiences, or even having fingers, toes, or hands. He even talks about dealing with magical fairies, magical creatures, and especially witches. Witches comes up a lot in his story, more than we initially thought. And there are definitely ways that we can backtrack that to different pieces of his story. One example is that we know that when we go to find King Arthur and Shrek the Third, I know Shrek the Third, but still, Donkey makes reference that he went there. An odd reference, and he says that they would always pick on him and give him a wedgie and take his underpants. And Puss makes note that he's a donkey, they don't wear underpants. He then replies with, "There's some things better left unsaid." Now, there are some that can argue that he is just making this up, but he seems to be in on this the whole time he's there. Talking about being pushed in lockers, he gets a sign stuck on his back, and he even makes reference that they had a nickname for him, Little Donkey something. I forgot what it was, but that does go again, like you said, the nickname, him being a donkey. I think what we have here is the mixing of stories again, where he is, because remember, this is a kingdom's school. It's kind of like a prep school, a private school, where only nobles and princesses can go. And this is a kind of school that, like, not just anybody can go to. And the fact that there are no animals there, no talking or at least sentient animals, just proves that there's no way Donkey would have been there. My theory for this aspect is that he was a human at this school. He was probably a noble, probably a prince. I'm going to say prince because that goes more with the story that we have in line. And that maybe one day he snuck out and commonly used a mystical artifact known as the donkey skin to help him leave and come and go as he pleased. That would make sense because, like I said, they kept calling him a donkey. That was a common joke with him. If he was human, why would he be called Donkey? And from what we can get from his family line, even though they may be human, you can tell they weren't close. Because we get in several different features, like in Shrek the Halls, where Donkey's talking to Shrek about his family. He says that his mother always said that it's not a Christmas until someone's crying, but that's always usually me. An odd thing to throw out there, suggesting that he was probably, for lack of a better term, the runt of the litter. He's probably the youngest of the family and wasn't really loved and or respected amongst them. An odd choice of words in that situation, but it fits with his theory that he may have been human, not really looked well upon in his family, and then went to school and wasn't looked great there. So then he decides, maybe one day I'm just gonna run, leave this place, I'll disguise myself as a donkey, and ends up getting caught by the Paradise Island people, where they take him and actually transform him into a donkey. How he talks, that can actually be explained too, because if you look at the Pinocchio movie, you know that the donkeys afterwards, once they transform, they do not turn back into humans, they don't share any features of humans, and they especially don't talk. All they do is make those donkey sounds. But in the director's commentary for Shrek 1, we do hear that Donkey wasn't able to talk originally. He was supposed to be kind of cursed by a witch to be able to talk. And the original concept was that Shrek was going to rescue him in this situation, but they never managed to fit that into the story. But they always said that that was just going to be a part of the story, even if it just wasn't mentioned. And how we can prove that was still a part of Donkey's story, just go to Shrek the fourth movie of the Shreks, and you can see where we meet Donkey when Shrek is captured. He is being held captive by witches, forced to sing for their amusement. So either way, we go back to that sentiment of Donkey being owned by witches. We do later on get the idea that Donkey is more of a tragic character than we led on to know, and it's fun to speculate what's going on there. But I do understand that there are several different factors that can go against my statement. So let's talk about those, shall we? Like I said, there's a lot of things that can be brought up that can counter my points. Like the idea that he was called a donkey at school could prove that maybe he was just there as a work mule. And yeah, that's a fair point, but then again, the underwear statement doesn't make sense, or the idea that they put him in a locker. Of course, we also have the idea that he was constantly called Donkey still. So that's a weird statement unless you add those steps like I said. We also have like I said, the witches cursed him to speak. And I do think that was more of just to bring back his sentience, if that makes sense, to bring back his human mind. Or maybe it was always there, he just wasn't able to talk. I mean, even when Puss is in Donkey's body, he tries to talk, but he has those donkey noises. And Donkey in Puss's body says, "Don't worry, you'll get used to that once you get the hang of it." An odd statement to make, as if he had to learn to talk without having to make those donkey noises. If he was always able to talk, he wouldn't need to have to concentrate about it. There are several other statements that could be made to argue my point, but I think it's strong enough to stand on its own. But for the better view of what I'm trying to say, I'm gonna do a quick rundown of what I think Donkey's storyline is. So, to begin with, Donkey is himself either of a noble lineage or he himself was a prince. Not a high-ranking prince, not the first son, probably the third or fourth, and probably not even that. He wasn't really looked well upon his family, and once they sent him off to a boarding school, a prep school, like King Arthur and them. But there he was still bullied and berated, and was often ridiculed, because the one thing he could do was hide his presence using a mystical donkey skin, being able to go in and out of the school and go unnoticed, as a human at least, and still only being seen as a donkey. They didn't really see that as a very favorable thing, and would often ridicule and mock him for only being able to take the appearance of a donkey using this basically sheet. So one day he finally gets fed up with it, tired of the bullying and tired of negativity, and leaves school and home to go and do his own thing, maybe look for a companion of his own. And in the process, he makes it out, but is picked up by the people that are picking up younger people, teenagers and kids, to this island where they can experience all the funs of the world that they wouldn't be able to at home. And for a minute it's fine, until he realizes that he is literally turning into a donkey at that point. Once they get him and turn him into a donkey, they sell him. He is unable to talk at this point. He may still have his mind there enough to take orders, but he is nothing but a pack mule at this point. He is then bought by a witch who has him carrying her luggage, her stuff around, And due to sheer lack of boredom, because there is no one willing to talk to her, she gives the donkey the ability to speak. Not because she wants to talk to him, but much more that she wants to curse him so that she can listen to him sing for all this time, kind of like a radio. That's why Donkey is always obsessed with singing. He is being forced to sing to her during her trips. One day she gets fed up with him because he's annoying and just wants to constantly talk due to not being able to for so long. She sells him to various other places, to the Keebler store, to a family who thinks he's a piñata, then finally ending up with an old lady who, also getting sick of his constant talking, wants to sell him to Lord Farquaad's people. There is pretty much where the story of Shrek 1 starts. He escapes and manages to meet up with Shrek, who becomes his one true companion, who doesn't see him as a failure, an annoyance maybe, but grows to accept him for what he is. As for the idea of why doesn't he want to be a human, or why doesn't he accept, like in Shrek 2, the happily ever after potion, why doesn't it change him back? That's because, remember what Shrek 1's about. It's about accepting who you are, not about wanting something new. And I think that the idea that he was accepted not only by Shrek, but by Fiona, by Dragon, and by all these other fairy tale creatures, that he was able to become friends with them, become loved by them, and to make himself a home, he's grown to accept his own appearance as a donkey, or as a mythical creature, realizing that the life he was living before wasn't great. In fact, it was terrible. He couldn't be loved by anybody. Not by family, not by other students. And so this is the life he chose. This is the life he wants. One not of ridicule, but one of love and around people that understand him. Both because he's a donkey and because he is who he is. As for why he wants to be a stallion, he deep down wishes to be more useful to his friends and family. He wants to be a fit stallion, a horse. He wants to be more than they let on. That's why he wants to be a stallion. He wants to be more than kind of what he is. And the idea that he is pretty much fabricating these imagines, because in one of the specials we do see that Donkey does talk about having a family of various other donkeys. I think that's just him talking about his human family and just relating them back to donkeys, kind of convincing himself and convincing others not to dig into his own past, making up his own past, making his own future. And I think that's a pretty interesting story overall. That's all I have for right now on that topic. I hope you guys enjoyed my little rambling rants. This theory, I wanted to give it a shot. I'm not sure if it's completely 100% soundproof, but it is an idea out there. If you guys have opinions, please leave them down in the comments. If you liked it, please subscribe and leave a like. I would really appreciate it. And I'll be back with more theories. I do got more on the mind. This was more of a test run for me to see how it feels, and I kind of like it, honestly. Let me know what you guys think. Alright, thanks again. See you next time.